Hello and welcome back in, you guys, to another One Piece chapter review. This time around, we're here to talk about chapter 1176, and the first thing we got today is a nice little callback to Volume 12's cover. Yes, that is right. Volume 12 is the iconic volume where we finally hit Logtown and we go beyond to the Grand Line. So I can see exactly why Oda wanted to call back to that, because that is where Season 2 of the One Piece live action actually kicks off. So, first time around, when reading this chapter, I will admit I busted up laughing, because the first thing we see is the callback, right? We got Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, all the new Straw Hats behind them, the Thousand Sunny in place of the Going Merry, and I'm like, wow, that looks amazing. I love callbacks. And then you scroll down in the chapter, and then you have the live action variant of it, and I just wasn't expecting it, you know? Just a knocking a door like this, and all the other Straw Hats behind him, and I'm like, yo, it looks good, but I will admit, I was taken aback a little bit. So, first things first, we actually got Franky, Bonnie, and Lilith here in Elbaph. Yes, that is right. Some people may forget, but Franky is a part of the Straw Hat crew, despite not seeing him for the last 20 chapters, and we finally see what they are up to. They have actually arrived at the Elbaph school. Lilith goes into the box that they brought over from Egghead Island, and Franky's like, hey, is Vegapunk's body in there? Lilith doesn't respond to that for some reason. I kind of wonder why. Like, maybe she's just so engrossed in technology that she didn't feel like it was necessary to answer Franky's question, but she does whip out a brand new device out of the box. It is the ODC, the Omni Drain Converter. And she just starts going on about how there's energy all around here in Elbaph, and she wonders if float technology will work here as well. I think it should. You know, given the fact that Svals are using cloud tech, yes, I do think that float technology should be capable here as well. And it kind of makes me wonder, we are leaving Lilith here on this island, right? So when we come back to Elbaph in the future, what is it gonna look like? Because right now, you know, it's all a bunch of savages, you know, they all have wooden homes. I'm just imagining that if there's a time skip and we come back to Elbaph end of story, it might just be the city of the future. You know, you're gonna see giants like flying in the sky, you know, they have lightsabers instead of swords. I feel like Lilith is gonna go crazy here, but we'll see, right? That does require a lot of money. But then again, if they want money, they could just sell parts of the Atom Tree, so maybe that's what happens. One thing I found pretty wholesome about this first page is that Bonnie is on top of Franky's head all throughout it, and whenever Franky reacts, Bonnie also reacts the exact same way. Glad to see that Bonnie's here. Again, I am expecting Bonnie to do something crazy here on this island. Like, I still want to see a de-aged Yarul, and Bonnie can make that happen. Also, Bonnie can go Nika mode if need be, right? In this chapter, we see Franky, Jimbei, Sanji going all out, and it's like, man, if we needed the extra oomph, Bonnie could help us fight. But it looks like she's just taking a backseat. You know, she is hanging out with Nika's crew after all, so I bet she's just having fun. So, we cut over to Nami's gang, and we see that they're running over to the school because they do want to put out the fires. Jimbei is close in tow because he sees the fire as well, and Usopp is just standing around panicking. Here's the thing, I always have to say this, I'm not a big Usopp fan. I'm truly not. In my opinion, he is the Straw Hat I like the least. But with that being said, I am still holding out hope for Usopp. I still think that in this arc, he will do something that only he can do. Something that'll just blow our socks off. But that is yet to happen. And every chapter we get Usopp in, I feel bad for the Usopp fans out there. Like, my heart is in shambles knowing that there's somebody out there whose favorite character is Usopp, and they're constantly waiting week to week for him to do something, because, brother, this is the only panel he's in, you know, hands on his head saying, what are we gonna do? Bro, what? I remember by the end of this chapter, spoiler alert, we got Zoro ganging up with Dory, Brogy, Hiredin, and Stanson, and he's standing in the middle like he owns the group. And yeah, it's a good shot and it's really comedic. And I was just thinking about it. I was like, man, if only Usopp was here, dude, where is he? And then I was scrolling through the chapter. I'm like, okay, maybe he's missing. Maybe he's like, doing something on the side. And, I came to realize that Usopp throwing his hands up is the only panel he has. Oda's a funny guy. Oda is a hilarious man. He knows that we're all expecting something from Usopp. I mean, dude, go back to Egghead Island. Go back to Enies Lobby, go back to Little Garden. Usopp kept on talking about how this is his place. This is where he wants to become a brave warrior. And yes, that can mean a myriad of things. Doesn't have to be a strength feat. It could simply be a strategic thing, or maybe, he makes a couple declarations or a nice speech. But he hasn't done anything yet. The most we've gotten out of Usopp in this arc is when he was drunk at the party, slapping around Yarul's sword. Like I said, I'm still holding out hope. But every week, I'm like, man, it's not happening, is it? It is not happening. So Nami comes up with an ingenious idea, and she uses pouring rain tempo to try to put out the fires at Walrus Academy and the library. And I say that's genius because we really haven't seen Nami use Zeus in this manner. She typically uses Zeus as an offensive fighter, so seeing her use Zeus as a rain conduit, I think is pretty cool. But sadly, Killingham shows up to rain on our parade. He says, hey guys, this was not a part of the deal. You were supposed to leave behind all of that savage history. And that is when he uses a new MMA monster, Dream Nightmare Demon, called Lindworm, to swallow Zeus whole. Pretty nice, even in this stage of Elbaph, we're still getting new Norse mythological monsters, which I think is pretty damn awesome. So yes, a Lindworm is a giant serpentine creature, kind of reminiscent of Jormungandr and Nidhogg, but not as devastating or scary. So yes, this Lindworm swallows Zeus whole, and now it seems that all hope has been lost when it comes to saving the school and library. Or has it? Because that is when Lilith, Franky, and Bonnie show up from the beginning of this chapter, and she tosses out the ODC. It flies over to the fire, and it absorbs all of the energy. It absorbs so much energy, in fact, that what was once fire is now ice. Not too sure how that works, but it just happened. Even Killingham is really shocked, like, dude, what the hell is that thing? The ODC ends up flying back over to Lilith, and she whips out a cola from it. She turns the fire into a fuel source and tosses it over to Franky. Franky says, hold up, this bottle looks like it's about to explode. And Lilith says, yep, I'd call it Super Vega Cola. Oh, that is right, guys. We are finally getting a Franky Vegapunk upgrade. See, this right here is what I think a lot of people wanted for Franky back on Egghead. I was one of them. I was like, okay, we're hitting Egghead. We need to give Franky some sort of upgrade. He's finally meeting his idol. It's gotta happen. But unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of time for Franky to get anything on Egghead Island, because right when the Straw Hats showed up, literally everything went to hell and back. CP0 showed up, York started her plot, the Seraphims were attacking, Kizaru showed up, 9 VAs, Gorosei, Buster Call, like everything went to shit. Now that Lilith is not being targeted, specifically, we have time to stop and smell the roses with a Vegapunk. And with it, we finally got that Vegapunk upgrade. Lilith says, hey, you have a body that is on par with that of a pacifista. I am shocked you have not tried anything other than cola as a fuel source. And I agree. Like, when she said that, I was taken aback. I was like, wait, has Franky never once tried to upgrade his fuel source ever since he was turned into a robot? Like, yes, he's tried tomato juice, tea, and all those other weird beverages during the time skip, but he never tried to go above and beyond that? Like not even back to like the OG Coca-Cola formula with cocaine? Huh. So yeah, Franky puts this new fuel source in his body and he becomes super strong. The one thing I wish we got with this upgrade was a visual cue. You know, something to differentiate regular Franky and Super Vega Cola Franky. Like maybe his hair changes color from blue to red. You know, maybe his hairstyle changes. Maybe his arms change or just something, right? I want something to help differentiate the two Frankies, regular Franky and Vega Franky. But then again, we don't really know yet if we're always going to have this fuel source on hand. And the reason I say that is because I don't know if Vegapunk is simply going to hand out the ODC to Franky for future arcs. Yes, Lilith is with us right now, but if we are leaving her in Elbaph to, you know, work on Kuma and work on getting the Stellar Body back into working order, then we're not going to have her around. So is she going to give us the ODC? And even then, right, we take the ODC with us. Do we always have to look for a fire source to get this upgrade? Or can Franky simply just reproduce the cola in his body and he has like a new fridge or a new machine to just help make it? Not too sure, right? I think that's still something we do have to like keep in mind. While this is an upgrade, we got to think about whether it's temporary or permanent. I hope permanent though, right? I love just an amped up Franky. And I feel the same way for most of the Straw Hats. I hope they do get upgrades. I'm not expecting one for everybody, but I hope they do get one. One more thing I want to touch on before we move on, that I really enjoy how Franky's upgrade is fire-based or fire-related, because his captain is Sun God Nika Luffy. Like, for example, Lilith does give us the ODC. Who's to say we can't just use this on Luffy? Like, maybe we put it in Luffy's head and it starts sucking out some of the fire and Franky gets like a Nika boosted cola. I think that'd also be pretty damn dope, but also maybe too overpowered. So before Franky can actually show us what this new body of his can do, we cut over to Killingham. He takes a gander at this whole situation and he's like, yo, this is laughable. You try to save the library? Well, watch that hope disappear. And he orders his lindworm to swallow the library whole because the lindworm is just that big. He turns over and he sees that Jimbei is swimming in water, which is kind of funny. You know, Jimbei was on land last we saw, and then we cut over and Jimbei's like over here just going for a little dive. I'm assuming he was going to use the water to help put out the fires at the school and library, but we didn't really get to see him do that. But you could see where his intentions were, right? But yes, Jimbei swimming in the water. Killingham takes a look at him and he says, "Peh, disgusting. Who the hell is that over there? Is that a fishman? Ugh, I'm really glad I'm wearing my mask today. I do not want to breathe the same air as that dirty Gyojin," which is hilarious. I love the Celestial Dragon dialogue, dude. It fits like a glove for me. Here's the thing. When it comes to Killingham making fun of Jimbei for being a fishman, it is just so meta in a sense. I don't know if Oda has actually been around and seen the theories. I don't know if this is what Oda's going for. But if you recall, if you were in the community when Killingham was first introduced, or at least we first saw his human form, a lot of people believe that he might be part fishman because of his sharp teeth. That is not confirmed. We don't see any gills or anything like that. And of course, we have seen humans with sharp teeth as well, like Katakuri and like Barto. But we've also seen characters with sharp teeth simply be fishmen. A great example would be Dellinger from Dressrosa. Sharp teeth, he looked human, but he was half fish. Maybe the same thing's going on with him. It's just really hard to tell in One Piece. You know, sharp teeth could mean something, but could also mean nothing. Personally, I am leaning towards human since he is a celestial dragon, but you gotta imagine how ironic it would be if he was part fishman and he just never knew, and he also discriminated against fishmen. Like, that would just be a nice, like, full circle, like, ironic moment. But again, we don't really know what Oda's going for here. But yeah, Sanji overhears the conversation and he says, "Man, look at that elitist attitude and that gross ideology. It's typical for a celestial dragon. You really don't recognize Jimbei, the first son of the sea? He was a warlord. You don't even know who that is?" And yeah, it is pretty crazy, but it does remind me of the last chapter where Zoro saved the kids and the parents from St. Somers. And St. Somers was like, wait, Who the hell is that swordsman? Only for Luffy to give him the explanation that that is Zoro. Do not forget about him. He's one of the Straw Hat Pirates. And it's like, damn, these God Knights really do not pay attention to anything outside of their bubble. Like, they know who the Yonko are, and that's pretty much it. Like, they don't look at the crews. They don't look at other promising pirates. They're just like, okay, Luffy, stay away from him. Moving on. So now that the stage has been set, Sanji, Franky, and Jimbei all spring into action. And one thing I really love about this is that it looks like Jimbei and Franky, they're just winding up the exact same way. It almost looks like they're equals, which I guess is kind of debatable now with Franky's upgrade. But yes, Franky goes in with a brand new attack, Strong Dexter. Jimbei goes in with Vagabond Drill, and Sanji hits Killingham with Ifrit Jambe Konkase. Breaks his bubble, and they also defeat the Lindworm in this nice double page. One thing I think that is absolutely cool and massive is Franky's new attack. Yes, upgraded, power scaling, woo! But the name Dexter, that is Latin for right. Of course, it's supposed to replace strong right, but here's the thing. Oda switching it up to Latin reminds me of Emmett. Reminds me of Emmett from Egghead. Because if you go back to the origins of Emmett's name, it's actually Hebrew. Yes, Hebrew and Latin, not the same thing. But the fact that Franky is switching it up to an older language, I'm like, wait a minute. This could just be another parallel that's saying that Franky is the modern day equivalent. Right now, I'm just really looking forward to seeing the rest of Franky's moveset upgraded to Latin phrases. And hell, if we want to get really crazy with it, maybe Franky gets a Latin epithet by the end of the arc. Because we do have to remember, but Franky's bounty poster is really odd. It looks like it's in due need of an upgrade, because right now, it's a picture of the Thousand Sunny. It's not even of Franky. So there's something wonky going on with that Oda's eventually going to explain and or touch on again. So, Sanji versus Killingham has officially kicked off. Literally. So, this matchup is something I think a lot of people just did not expect. You know, going back to the polls I held a couple of months ago, I was like, hey, you know, who do you guys think Zoro's gonna fight? Who do you think Sanji's gonna fight? For Sanji, St. Somers won the poll by a large margin. For Zoro, Killingham won the poll. But here we go, Oda is playing with expectations, and now we have Sanji versus Killingham. Of course, Killingham might not be Sanji's ultimate matchup here in Elbaph, right? We have seen in previous arcs that the person you fight in the beginning isn't the person you're gonna fight by the end of the arc. So maybe that's the case, but either way, I do like the fact that Sanji is getting a God Knight matchup, regardless of who it is. And now that Sanji versus a God Knight has started, what's going to happen? Obviously, Killingham has regeneration, and Sanji doesn't really have any answers for that right now. So, come next chapter, and the chapters moving forward, if Oda continues this fight, will Sanji unlock Conqueror's Haki to actually combat the God Knights, or will Sanji find a separate solution? Honestly, I'm fine with either or, but I just feel like Conqueror's Haki makes the most sense, especially since Scott Gabon was shown with Conqueror's Haki in this arc, and of course, since Luffy and Zoro have Conqueror's Haki. Sanji getting it, I think thematically, just fits really well. And we could even throw some stipulations in there if that's what people want, right? Like, oh, he's a conqueror, but he has to activate his Germa mode, right? His eyebrows have to switch. His personality has to switch a little bit. I'm cool with that. You know, as long as Sanji gets something here, I'd be a happy camper. And also, one thing we do have to get during this matchup is the Sanji and Scopper Gabon conversation. Because before we started the Loki flashback, we had a whole thing where Scopper Gabon was like, hey, you know, you guys have another conqueror among you. And then he talks about Zoro's leaky cock. Sanji was like, hey, Gabon, what about me? Do I have Conqueror's Haki? We did not see Scopper's response to it. Instead, I believe we cut away to Loki and Hyruden. And then when we cut back to Sanji, Oda does a thing where Sanji's cigarette is falling out and you see no words in the background. And it's like, whoa, what did he say? You know, Was it good news? Was it bad news? I don't know. Because after that, Sanji just simply says he's going to go up to the Sun Realm. And it's like, okay, like, he's not sad. But Sanji's not the type to get sad anyway. So if you told him no, he'd probably just shrug it off. But, I don't know, man. I'm excited to see that continuation. Also, one thing I just realized, I'm looking at the Lindworm panel right now. One, Zeus is freed, which is really nice. I'm never really worried about Zeus because he is a big mom homie in a cloud. I'm just never worried for his life. It's like, okay, unless you're using soul-based attacks, Zeus is gonna be cool. He's just temporarily kidnapped. But one thing is that Franky's attack is actually so strong that it decapitates the Lindworm. You know, go to that panel on the bottom left. The Lindworm's head is flying off because of Franky's punch. Oh my god. Dude, Latin Super Vega Cola powered up Franky is insane, man. So now we cut back over to the Western Village and we see that Dory and Brogy have come back to their senses temporarily. Brogy says, hey Dory, are you still in there? Dory says, yep, I'm barely holding on, Brogy. We are disgraces. How could we even let those words, those insults come out of our lips? If we actually take Jarl's head, then it would stain our honor for generations. I agree. All right, let's do this. Let's die with pride. They end up getting up and slicing each other's heads off. But that is not where it ends. They're not dead yet because they flip into the ground and wouldn't you know it, but they are back to normal and their heads are attached again. Unfortunately, Brogy's left wrist that Emu shot off beforehand did not come back. And that makes sense because that was a wound he sustained before Domi Reversi. And it's kind of crazy because I was like, wait, is his hand back? Is it not back? And if you look at that last page where all the giants are posed up with Zoro, it's like, wait, it might be there. But and then you go back to like the panel beforehand and you can see that it's obviously a pool of blood, which is pretty crazy, huh? That means that Brogy is holding his shield up with his newly found nub. That must hurt. That must really hurt. So yes, it is revealed that the answer to beating Domi Reversi is to simply kill your opponent. But it looks like you really have to kill them, right? Because up until this chapter, right, go back to like the beginning of the cutaway to the Western Village, we see that some of these giants have like holes in their shoulders, holes in their bodies, and they're just regenerating. They're fine. So it looks like you really do have to land like a one-hit KO for these guys to actually get undomified. And one thing too, it looks like Dory and Brogy, their stamina regenerated. Am I crazy to say that? Because go back to the beginning, again, of the cutaway to the Western Village. Dory and Brogy are like huffing and puffing. You see like the air coming out of their mouths. And then by the end of the chapter, dude, they're chilling, man. They're ready to fight some more. And it's just so interesting. It's like, how does this work? Because, you know, go back to God Valley. When Rock was undomified, you know, he wasn't getting up ready to fight again, even though he was huffing and puffing while Domi reversing. No, he was down on the ground, just ready to die. And I've seen somebody say that maybe the reason why he's on the ground is because he simply gave up. Like, yeah, he does have the stamina, but he also just massacred his hometown and he potentially killed his wife and son. So maybe even though he has the stamina, he doesn't have the willpower to fight back anymore, which I do like that answer a lot. But yes, to undomify the rest of the giants, Zoro, Hiruden, Stanson, Dory, and Brogy team up to put him down. Oh, dude, it's hilarious, man. Just seeing what everybody's saying at the end, like, yo, we don't need to hold back. You know, we could just kill them, decapitate them. We can pull their hearts out if we want to. It's gonna feel really weird because we know all of these guys, but this is the only way. And we get like a little montage of each of their reactions. And it's hilarious because they're like, oh man, I feel so bad about this, but they're all smiling at the same time. It's like, okay, next chapter, we're probably just gonna get like heads flying up left and right. This is a very random reference, but it reminds me of One Punch Man Season 1, where Super Sonic is going around killing all the headhunters, and you just see heads flying left and right. That right there is kind of what I'm expecting come next chapter. But yeah, Domi Reversi is such an interesting ability. Like, at first, it seems really broken, but now that we know the answer, it's like, oh, it's actually kind of simple. I still wonder if there's gonna be like more solutions to it. Like, you know, could Luffy still liberate them with his fires? You know, could you manually push them into the ground? There's gotta be other answers than just decapitation. But then again, I feel like decapitation's pretty simple, right? It's very straightforward. You don't even need Haki for this one necessarily, so yeah, let me know what you guys think about all of this down below. Of course, we got no Luffy, no Loki, and no Brook this chapter. A little bit unfortunate, but I do think Oda is saving that big bad emu battle for the end of Elbaph. But yeah, let me know your thoughts and opinions down below. Of course, in the next couple of days, we will be coming back and reading through the comment section. So if you want your comment read, make sure to drop it down there. And of course, we will be doing some polls in the meanwhile too, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, thank you guys so much for stopping by, checking out this video all the way until the end. I really freaking appreciate it. And I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.